We play and call it work.
Hey folks, Janene from MiniWarGaming here with another how-to video for ya. In this video, we are going to finish this blood letter by working on the base. Now, this base is a sculpted resin base and it has a bunch of skulls as well as some cobblestone on the side. So we are going to paint these as if they are skulls and a little bit of bloody water. And we are going to paint the cobblestone to be a brown, earthy cobblestone. As always, if you have suggestions for what you'd like to see in future how-to videos, please leave them down below in the comments. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is paint the skulls, and we are going to start by base coating them in some scrag brown mixed with a little bit of Lamian medium. This is an all-over layer, and right now I'm not necessarily concerned with slopping over onto the other parts of the base. I really just want to make sure that I get a good coat on all of the bone here. The only skull that we're a little bit worried about is the one that happens to be right underneath the bloodletter's foot, because we do not want to slop over onto the mini itself since that's already been painted. Once we have everything coated in scrag brown, we're going to start highlighting the bone, and our first layer is going to be Tallarn sand. I'm just going to apply this very quickly using a heavy dry brush. And I picked the skulls as the first thing to do in this process because, again, I didn't want to worry about slopping over. So I can be as sloppy with this dry brush as I want. I don't necessarily need to worry about whether or not I get it on any other parts of the base. Once I've got the bone pretty much entirely coated with that Tallarn sand, I'm going to do another dry brush highlight, this time using Ushabti bone. This time I'm going to be just a little bit more selective, still kind of sloppy and loose, but I'm really just trying to get the tops of these skulls and not necessarily the entirety of them. And I'm going to go ahead and do a couple layers just to build up a little bit more brightness. I'm doing one more highlight using Screaming Skull, again dry brushing this onto the very tops of the skulls, really just trying to catch the very top sections that would be in the most light. Now that we have all of these skulls painted and highlighted, we're going to start to paint the blood around them. Our first layer is going to be Doombull Brown. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of Lamian medium. I picked it because I didn't want this to be really bright orangey red blood. I want this to be kind of a more maroon, deep red blood. And I'm going to paint this in all of these little textured areas between the skulls. I want to be as neat as I can. If I slop over a little bit, however, it's going to be okay. And I really am concentrating on making sure I get this Doombull brown color into all of the nooks and crannies. Once I have Doombull on all of the red areas, I'm going to start highlighting the red a little bit. I'm going to start with Mephiston red. Again, I put a little bit of Lamian medium into the paint before I use it, and I'm going to apply this into the middle of all of the areas that I painted the Doombull brown. I'm really just dabbing this in there. I'm not necessarily blending it very smoothly. Some of the unevenness in color is going to add to kind of the look of this bloody water, where some areas would just be brighter than others. Now that I've brightened the red up a little bit, I'm going to add some Carroburg Crimson. This is again just going to tone it down and make it look like it's really dark red blood. This works particularly well because this base was sculpted to have a little bit of grit in between these skulls, so the Carroburg Crimson is going to get into those crevices really well. As I apply it, I also want to make sure that I paint a little bit onto the skulls, because I want these skulls to look like they've been soaking in this blood and it would have splashed up onto them and kind of saturated them and changed their color. We are going to transition to working on the cobblestone right now. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do an all-over layer of dryad bark mixed with a little bit of Lamian medium. We also want to make sure that we get the side of the cobblestone around the outer edge, as well as the inner edge that's right next to the skulls. Once again, our first highlight for the cobblestone is going to be a Tallarn sand dry brush. My goal here is really to just make sure that I get a smooth dry brush and I get a smooth transition of colors. And the way that I'm going to do that is by making sure that I do a lot of very small layers with very little paint on my brush, instead of working up one large layer that has a lot of paint, because that will end up being very streaky. If I just do little small layers over and over and over again, I have a little bit more control of where the paint goes, and I can create a smoother gradient between the dark brown that I already have on the cobblestone and this much brighter highlight. Here's the cobblestone after the first dry brush. We're going to add a second one using Ushapti bone. Now, I'm not worried about making sure this color gets everywhere on this cobblestone. I'm really just focusing on the outer edges and any large flat area that I can get to, because having this third color is going to add a little bit of color differentiation. And if you look at tile or stone in a floor, the colors fade back and forth very naturally, and there's a lot of different hues in one particular block. Once we've got the Ushapti bone dry brush finished, we're going to coat everything with Agrax Earthshade. Once we apply this Agrax Earthshade, all of the colors of the cobblestone are going to look very different than the colors of the skulls, even though they started with the same base. The last thing that I want to do is I want to apply a little bit of this Woodland Scenics Realistic Water. That's going to take the textured blood area that we've got and really make it look like it's wet, bloody water. Now, to make it easier to apply, I just picked up one of these very small little squeeze bottles. It's got a very tiny little opening at the end, and I just put a little bit in there, and I'm going to use this as an applicator to control how I put this onto the base. I'm just going to squeeze this into the cracks between skulls, and as long as I don't apply it too thickly, it should stay on the base. The surface tension should keep it intact. It is self-leveling though, so it should sink down into the cracks and flatten out a little bit. Now, after you've applied the realistic water, set your mini aside, give it plenty of time to dry, at least a day, 2 if you want to be extra safe. And here's what it looks like after it's dried clear. It's a very quick thing that adds a lot of interest to a base, even if you do a very simple color scheme on it. So the very last step is to do the outer ring in black. We're going to use some Abaddon black with a little bit of Lamian medium. And we're just going to drag our brush along this outer ring, getting a nice, even, flat black, and cleaning up all of the slops on the edges as we go. Alright, here is the mini completely done. It's very different than your traditional bloodletter, but it let me play around with a few fun techniques, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more how-to videos, I have another one where I go through the steps of painting the dark copper hilt of the sword in the MiniWarGaming vault, and the link down below in the description. If you don't have a vault membership, go ahead, click the link. You can start a 7-day free trial and get access to my video, as well as hundreds of other videos in the MiniWarGaming vault. So go ahead, click the link, start your free trial, and happy wargaming.